Somewhere in America right now, a 28-year-old is opening a lease renewal letter. She's been in this one bedroom for 2 years. It's fine. The dishwasher works about 70% of the time, and the neighbor above her does what sounds like competitive bowling at 11 p.m., but it's home. She scans down to the number. Her rent is going up $185 a month. She does the math in her head fast, the way you get good at when every month is a close call. That's $2,220 a year. That's her entire emergency fund. That's the car repair she's been putting off. That's Christmas. And here's the part nobody at the leasing office will say out loud. She's actually one of the lucky ones because her city is one of the few where rents are technically softening. This isn't a video about rent being expensive, rent is expensive. This is a video about why the math we use to define affordable stopped working years ago, and almost nobody has admitted it yet. Let me show you the numbers. My name is Nick, and if you've been renting anywhere in America for the last 5 years, you already know something is broken. You just might not know exactly what or how deep it goes or why even doing everything right still leaves you behind. That's what we're fixing today. We're going to start with the rule because everything else falls apart once the rule does. You've probably heard it your whole adult life. Spend no more than 30% of your income on rent. Simple, clean, feels responsible. Financial advisors love it. Your parents probably said it. Some YouTuber in a rented Lamborghini has definitely said it. Here's the thing. That rule is from 1969, and technically the original version was 25%. It came from something called the Brooke Amendment, and it was designed for exactly one thing: capping how much the federal government could charge low-income tenants in public housing. It was a rent-setting formula for a specific housing program. In 1981, under Reagan, it got bumped up to 30%, and somewhere along the way, it escaped the public housing program, got into the wild, and became the universal definition of what affordable means for every renter in America. Nobody ever updated it, not when healthcare went from 6% of GDP to 17%. Not when student loans went from a rounding error to $1.7 trillion. Not when the average new car payment hit $767 a month. Not when family health insurance premiums crossed $27,000 a year. The 30% rule is sitting there frozen in 1981, wearing shoulder pads, blasting Hall and Oates, while the rest of your budget got put through a wood chipper. So let's actually run the numbers. In March 2026, according to Zillow, the typical US rent is $1,910 a month. At the 30% rule, that means to afford the typical American apartment, you need to earn roughly $76,400 a year. Now, the median US household income, about $83,000. Sounds like the median household should be fine. Except the median household is not the median renter. The median renter household earns about $51,000. Homeowners pull in $94,000. Renters make 54 cents for every dollar a homeowner makes. So the actual person paying actual rent, they're spending about 45% of their gross income on housing before they've paid a utility bill, a car payment, a health premium, or a student loan. Half of all American renters, 22.6 million households, are officially cost-burdened by the government's own definition. That's an all-time record, and 12.1 million of those are severely burdened, meaning they spend over half of every paycheck on rent. 12 million American households are paying more than 50% of their income just to have a place to sleep. And if you're thinking, okay, but those are low-income renters, right? Here's the uncomfortable update. Among renters earning between $45,000 and $75,000, which is a solidly middle-class income, 45% are now cost-burdened. That number has nearly doubled in the last 2 decades. Rent has stopped being a poverty issue and started being a normal life issue. Somewhere along the way, this country decided that if you can't afford rent, the problem must be your latte, not the rent. The latte. Financial influencers built entire careers telling people earning $48,000 in cities where a one-bedroom costs $2,000 that the reason they can't save is because they ordered DoorDash twice last month. You cannot budget your way out of an input problem. You cannot skip enough avocado toast to close a $500 monthly math gap. The numbers are not lying. The framing is. Let me paint you a picture of what this actually looks like. Let's build a real budget. Meet Kevin. Kevin is not a real person, but Kevin is basically every third person watching this video. Kevin is 30, single, lives in Columbus, Ohio, which is important because Columbus is cheap. Columbus is not a scary coastal city. Columbus shows up on every best places to live list. Kevin makes $48,000 a year, right around the US median for a single worker. Kevin's gross income is $4,000 a month. After federal taxes, FICA, Ohio state tax, and a modest health premium, Kevin is taking home about $3,226 a month. A one-bedroom in Columbus averages about $1,165. That's 29% of his gross income. So Kevin technically passes the 30% rule. Congratulations, Kevin. You're doing everything right. Except now we have to pay for the rest of being alive. Utilities, internet, phone, renter's insurance, that's about $460. Groceries, $425 if he's careful. Dining out, which includes the occasional sad burrito at 9 p.m. because cooking again sounds physically impossible, $220. Use car payment because Kevin drives a 5-year-old Toyota like a responsible adult who read one Reddit thread about depreciation and took it personally, $537. Car insurance, gas, maintenance, another $380. Student loan, $300. Health copays, $75. Entertainment and personal care, $195. Kevin's total monthly expenses are about $3,754, and he brought home $3,226. Kevin is in the hole $528 a month, and he hasn't done anything wrong. He didn't buy a boat, he didn't get a giant truck, he didn't fly to Cabo. He got a one-bedroom in a cheap city and drove a used car and ate groceries. That's the entire crime. Kevin's rent is only 29% of his gross income. But after taxes, it's 36% of his actual money. And after every other unavoidable expense, Kevin is mathematically insolvent. That's the 30% rule working perfectly. And it's producing a person who cannot afford to exist. Now, turn Kevin into a couple earning $100,000 combined in Denver. 6 figures, right? A 2-bedroom in Denver runs about $2,050. After taxes and a family health premium, this couple takes home about $6,238 a month. 2 car payments, 2 insurance policies, 2 commutes, $2,239 right there. Utilities, groceries, 2 student loans, health copays, basic entertainment, and you know what's left at the end of the month? Negative $938. They are not buying boats. They are not flying to Tulum. They are earning 6 figures and losing a monthly competition to their own electric bill. This is why the 30% rule feels like a cruel joke if you've actually tried to use it. And the worst part is, it gives people who are drowning a reason to blame themselves. They look at the numbers, see rent is 30% of gross, and think, I must be bad with money. No, the math is bad. You're just the one stuck inside it. Okay, you might be thinking this is brutal, but at least the rent itself is set by some kind of competitive market, right? Strap in. In 2022, ProPublica published an investigation into a company called RealPage. RealPage sold pricing software, flagship product YieldStar, to apartment landlords across America. Landlords would feed it their private rent data, their occupancy numbers, their lease terms. The software would cross-reference that with data from all the other landlords using it, and it would spit out a suggested rent. By 2022, RealPage's software was pricing about 19.5 million apartments, roughly 1 in 6 rental units in America. In one Seattle neighborhood, ProPublica found that 70% of more than 10,000 apartments were being priced by just 10 property managers, all using the same software. All seeing each other's data, one RealPage vice president said leasing agents have, and I quote, too much empathy, which is a real sentence that a real human being said in a real sales meeting, and somehow nobody in the room stood up and left. The Department of Justice later cited a landlord who reportedly raised rents more than 25% within 11 months of adopting the software. In 2024, the DOJ sued RealPage for what basically amounts to algorithmic collusion. In late 2025, the case settled. Want to know how much RealPage paid in fines? $0. No admission of wrongdoing. They just have to stop using competitors' private data and accept a monitor for 3 years. That's it. The money that was extracted from millions of renters during the peak years, that's gone. That rent increase you got in 2022, that felt inexplicable. That was probably a computer. And the computer got away with it. And if you think that's the worst part, wait until you try to sign a lease, because the listed rent is not the real rent. The listed rent is the menu price. The real price has a tip, a service fee, a convenience fee, and somehow a surcharge for the chair you're sitting in. Application fees, $50 to $350 per apartment. Apply to 10 places at $75 a pop, and you've burned $750 before you've even signed a lease. Security deposit, usually 1 to 2 months of rent locked up in a landlord's account, earning them interest, not you. Nationwide, there's an estimated $45 billion of renters' money frozen in security deposit escrow right now, roughly the GDP of Bolivia, just sitting there. Then the drip fees, pet deposit, pet fee, and monthly pet rent, a surcharge just because your dog exists. Your dog did not sign the lease, your dog does not have a credit score, but your dog owes rent. About 72% of pet-friendly apartments now charge monthly pet rent, up from 58% in 2018. Parking, $150 to $900 a month in major cities. Amenity fees for the gym you'll use twice. Technology fees for the internet package you didn't ask for. Trash valet fees that mean someone walks past your door and takes a bag you could have walked 40 feet to a dumpster yourself. The FTC in 2025 passed a rule forcing businesses to disclose full prices up front. It's called the junk fees rule. It went into effect in May 2025. Rental housing was specifically explicitly 100% excluded. The rule designed to stop junk fees excluded the single largest source of junk fees in American life. That is not incompetence. That is a magic trick. Here's another number that should not be real, but is. In Phoenix, Arizona, in 2024, a landlord filed an eviction every 6 minutes. 6 minutes. That's faster than most people can make a sandwich. 86,946 eviction filings in a single metro in a single year, and one more that reframes everything. According to the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, 48% of the U.S. workforce, about 74 million workers, earn below the national 2-bedroom housing wage. Almost half the people who go to work every day in this country do not earn enough to afford a modest 2-bedroom apartment at fair market rent anywhere. Not in their city, not in any city. These are the people running the country, and the country they run has priced them out of the country. At this point, you might be thinking, okay, I'll just buy a house. And honestly, that instinct is why the next number is so demoralizing. Bankrate ran the numbers in 2025. In all 50 of the largest US metros, renting is cheaper than buying the same home. Not some of them, all of them. Nationally, buying costs 38% more per month than renting. In San Jose, buying costs about $4,783 more per month than renting the equivalent home per month. That's a used car. That's a second kid every single month. Yeah, but the mortgage builds equity. Let's check that. On a median-priced American home at today's mortgage rate around 6.3%, about 84% of your first year's mortgage payment goes to interest. In year one, you'd build roughly $3,870 in equity and hand the bank roughly $20,400 in interest. That's not wealth building. That's rent paid to a bank with extra paperwork, and Zillow calculated that the typical American renter at current wages and savings rates now needs about 12 years to save a 20% down payment on a typical home. 5 years ago, that number was essentially zero. The down payment itself has become a life stage. So where do people actually go? The honest answer, back home, or to a roommate, or both. About 32.5% of American 18 to 34-year-olds, roughly 23 million people, now live with their parents, near the highest share since the 1940s. One Zillow survey found that 60% of Gen Z and millennial renters say finding a roommate is now harder than finding a romantic partner, which honestly tracks, and it's not just young people. Meet Linda. Linda is 71. Linda worked for 40 years as a legal secretary in Phoenix. Linda has Social Security and a small pension that together bring in about $2,100 a month. Linda's rent just went up to $1,650. Linda is now spending 79% of her income on rent. Linda is not an edge case. There are 12.4 million cost-burdened senior households in America right now, a record. 66% of women over 65 renting alone are cost-burdened. These are people on fixed incomes watching rent go up 8% at renewal every year, with no raise coming to catch up. In January 2024, HUD counted 771,480 Americans homeless on a single night, highest number ever recorded, up 18% in 1 year. Nearly 150,000 of them were children. HUD's own report explicitly named housing affordability as the biggest driver. This is not a personal failure statistic. This is a system output. All right, I want to give you the honest full picture because doom is easy and doom is incomplete. There's actually some good news buried in 2026. Rent growth has slowed to 1.8% nationally, the slowest pace since 2020. Some Sunbelt cities are actively losing ground. Austin down 4.8% year over year, Denver down 3.6%, Phoenix down 2.9%. In 15 of the 50 biggest metros, rents are at least 10% below their pandemic peak. Wage growth is finally outpacing rent growth. The typical American renter household has about $2,300 more flexibility this year than last. If you're renewing a lease right now, negotiate hard. Landlords are offering concessions again, free months, waived fees, reduced deposits. The tenant has some leverage. Use it. But here's where I have to be straight with you. This is not the start of a new trend. This is a supply blip. In 2024, apartment builders completed about 608,000 multifamily units, a 38-year high. That flood of new apartments is exactly why rents are soft right now. When a huge wave hits the market at once, landlords have to compete, and competition means concessions. But in 2024, builders started about 254,000 fewer multifamily units than they completed. Interest rates spiked, construction costs jumped, tariffs added about $10,900 to every new home. So the pipeline filling the market right now is draining. 2025 deliveries dropped to about 500,000. 2026 is projected at 330,000 to 470,000. 2027 is projected to bottom out at about 327,000, roughly half of what we're getting today, arriving into a market where renter demand is still growing, where 80% of existing homeowners are locked into mortgages under 5% and are not moving. Every major forecaster expects rent growth to reaccelerate starting in late 2026. CBRE projects a 3.1% annual average over the next 5 years, above the pre-pandemic average. So here's the honest interpretation. 2026 is probably the best rental market renters will see this decade. It's the eye of the storm, not the end of it. And if you're just surviving out there, renting, doing the best you can, I want you to hear this clearly. None of this is your fault. You are not failing the 30% rule. The 30% rule is failing you. It was designed in an era when a car cost $3,000 in today's dollars, college was functionally free, and one income could support a family. That world is gone and the rule didn't update. The question at the top of this video was, who can afford rent in 2026? The honest answer, not the median individual, not the median renter household, not the median young adult, and increasingly not the median senior. Everyone else is making it work by breaking a different rule. Skipping the car, skipping the solo apartment, skipping retirement, moving in with mom. The math is true. So here's what you can do with that truth this week. 3 moves. 1. If your lease is up in 2026, do not accept the first renewal number the landlord sends you. Look up what concessions are being offered on new leases in your building right now and walk into that renewal conversation with data. The leverage is briefly yours. It will not be yours in 2027. 2, if you're thinking about buying, do not run the national numbers. Run your zip code. In about a dozen metros, the rent versus buy math is close. In most, it's not. 3. If remote work allows, look hard at the roughly 7% of US counties where a one-bedroom still rents for under $1,000. Wichita, Louisville, Oklahoma City, Toledo. The trade-offs are real, but so is the math. Just a reminder, I'm not a financial advisor. This video is for educational purposes only. If this one hit home, hit that subscribe button because the next video is going to break down the exact negotiation script to use on your landlord at renewal, line by line, including the 3 concession asks that land most often in 2026. The math has been lying to you. Time to start using it back.